And so if you were to read through Genesis chapter 12, in Genesis chapter 12, God gave Abraham a promise of a blessing. So like I'm going to bless you, your families, like whatever you do, wherever you go, I'm going to bless you. And has someone ever promised something from you before? Like given you a promise? Now, has anybody broken a promise? Like I'm not saying, like, oh, I don't want to raise my hand and I break a promise. Like I think we've all broken promises in our lives. But I remember when Adeline, my oldest, was a little bit younger, I had to be very careful how I worded things with her. She's very literal, and she still is, but not, she's, obviously matured and grown up. But when she was, I don't know, I'd say probably under the age of 12 years old, probably 10, 11 and younger, I had to be very careful how I worded things. So we would love to play pickleball. And there's a pickleball court up at the Marcy town parks. And so I would say, hey, on Friday, or Saturday, let's go play pickleball. I'd say this on Monday. Hey, the weather looks good. Let's go, play pickleball. And she's like, okay, she'd be all excited. And then, Saturday morning, we would get up and it'd be raining. And I'd be like, oh, well, she's like, are we going to go? I'm like, well, no, we can't. It's raining. You lied to me. I'm like, whoa, what do you mean I lied to you? She's like, you lied to me. You said we were going to play. I'm like, it's pouring rain out. Like the weatherman could barely predict the weather. I certainly cannot predict whether it's going to rain or not. 5 days earlier, I'm sorry. She's like, but you said. And so I had to be very careful how I worded things with my oldest because I didn't want her to think that I was breaking a promise. And so I began to change my language. Hey, if everything works out, if it doesn't rain, if we don't have an emergency, if these things don't happen, then maybe we'll go play pickleball. And I had to start phrasing how I would say things to her a little bit differently. Well, then we go to Genesis chapter 15. And in Genesis chapter 15, God makes a covenant with Abraham that his descendants would be as many as their stars in the sky. People really don't use that word anymore, though, a lot, covenant, right? Covenant is essentially, it's like a contract, a binding contract that if you do this, I will do this. God made a covenant with Abraham. And then in Genesis chapter 17, God tells Abraham that this covenant that he has with him, he is going to establish it to, make his descendants as many stars are in the sky. He's going to establish it through his wife, Sarah. The thing is, with Sarah, at this time, she's been barren. She's 90 years old. Abraham is 100 years old. The days of living to 900, okay, we talked about those are gone. All right, Abraham is an old man. He's not a young man who's going to live to 900. Like those days are long gone. All right, Abraham is an old man. He's 100, right? He's coming near to the end of his life. And God says, your wife Sarah, I'm going to establish my covenant through her. She's 90 years old. Abraham kind of chuckles to himself like, yeah, she's 90, I'm 100. Like, are you serious right now? And in Genesis chapter 17, verse 19, it says, then God said, but your wife Sarah will bear you a son, and you will call him Isaac. I will establish my covenant with him as an everlasting covenant for his descendants after him. So not only is God telling Abraham, I'm going to establish a covenant through your wife Sarah, who's been barren for 90 years, right? But through her son, Isaac, that is who I'm going to establish my covenant with. So in Genesis 21, Sarah comes pregnant. And have you noticed how God uses the most unlikely of people in the most unlikely of times? Like Sarah has been barren her entire life. She's 90 years old. Abraham is 100. Like it's pretty unlikely timing for God to establish his everlasting covenant through their son, Isaac. But he does. God is faithful to his word. Amen? So this promised child of Isaac is born. This promised child to Sarah, who is 90 years old, he is born. And Isaac will be the son that God establishes his covenant with, who he will bless. Abraham's descendants will be as many as their stars are in the sky, all through Isaac.